Shameful. I have been in Australia for 6 decades, but I have never visited the Outback. The solution? A 1-week dirt ride in the centre of Australia, visiting all the iconic landmarks. Ayers Rock, the Olgas, Kings Canyon, Chambers Pillar, and the incredible Finke Gorge. It's the Rock 6-day tour, courtesy of Outback Motorcycle Adventures. Day 1, we start at Alice Springs in the red centre of Australia. There is a bit of highway before we hit the dirt. The plan? We will ride some of the infamous Finke Desert Race track. Lunch will be at the well-known landmark Chambers Pillar. We ride through Desert Oak Country to finish with a ride along the Finke River, the world's oldest known river. The guys only run these tours for 6 months of the year to avoid the deadly heat of the Outback summer. It's currently winter, so great temperatures for riding. It can get chilly at night, but the guys will provide us with warm swags, hot food and campfires every night. Woohoo! The Finke Desert Race track. This is the fastest desert race in the Southern Hemisphere. The pro riders can reach 190 kilometres per hour on some sections. And in 2022, David Walsh averaged about 130 kilometres an hour on his record-breaking win. Jeff and I slow down as we reminded ourselves that injuries often happen on the first morning of tours like this. And sure enough, we had 2 riders taken to hospital by lunchtime. The soft sand is great practice, as there will be plenty of soft sand sections over the next week. All the bikes came with steering stabilisers. These make a big difference for sand riding. I can see why most desert riders use them. We watch for the danger signs, red circles or squares. Even at our low speeds, it is good to know when there's a tricky section ahead. It's hard to imagine the fastest riders doing 180 kilometres per hour, then hitting the brakes hard for these sections. The corner markers are similar. The curves are so gradual, the signs seem redundant at our low speeds. Still love the stag tags. I don't know if you can see them on Jeff's bike. They got the big desert ones. 3 rubber pucks. Man, it just takes all the pressure off your arms. There are plenty of crests which can be tricky. If you slow down too much, the front wheel digs into the soft sand and you can lose your steering. One of our guys demonstrates the technique. Woo! If you are interested in riding the entire racetrack, the guys at Outback Motorcycle Adventures have a 2-day tour of the Finke racetrack. Or if you are crazy enough to enter the race, they have support and hire packages. And it's back to easy dirt roads. The outback is big, seriously big. Riders told me about the endless vistas, and it's hard to comprehend until you are actually here. At the end of the first night, Jeff said he felt so insignificant. We were just simply tiny dots on this massive landscape. It definitely puts everything into perspective. There is the sense of timelessness too. The outback features some of the oldest, flattest landscapes in the world due to very little movement of tectonic plates. So we are riding in landscapes that can be up to 500 million years old. And Indigenous Australians have lived here for around 50,000 years.
Very basic crash, but a sore knee. And we're almost there. Chambers Pillar. If you can see that little pillar in the background, that's our destination.
Unfortunately, Simon wasn't wearing any knee guards. It was a simple crash in first gear, but it fractured his tibia. He ended up in hospital and was scheduled for surgery. It's a good reminder to always wear knee guards at an absolute minimum. And many of us have spent more money on knee braces for extra protection. Another rider, Mark, crashed in soft sand and had multiple rib fractures, so he was off to hospital as well. I have been on a few tours where riders are injured on the first day. So Jeff, Coxie and I keep reminding ourselves to go slow. We can always increase the speed toward the end of the trip and at least do most of the tour before hurting ourselves. Some big rock formations on the horizon. Our lunch destination draws near. The Aboriginal legend says that the pillar is the gecko ancestor Itukawara, who was exiled for taking a wife from the wrong skin group. When he and his wife stopped to rest among the sand dunes, they each turned into one of the locally prominent rock formations. Itukawara became the pillar and his wife became Castle Rock, which is nearby. White Aussies used these as landmarks on the way to Alice Springs before the railway was established in 1920. Time to hit the road. We load our injured riders into the support vehicle for transport back to Alice Springs. We'll definitely be taking it easy now. Plenty of guys organise their own outback ride, but one of the advantages of this tour is that arrangements have been made to ride across various private properties. Without this access, we would spend a lot of time on highways trying to join up the dirt sections. These properties can be seriously big. An example, Anna Creek Station is bigger than quite a few countries like Israel. This property is smaller, but we will spend the next few hours riding across part of this cattle station. There is a lot of variety in just the first few kilometres. Soft sand tracks, this dried dam with a hard polished surface, and a rock section through low hills. I must introduce you to Stretch. He is only 5 feet tall. He had to do a running start to get on his bike. I think this Sherco was lowered, but he was always happy to swap bikes with others as he couldn't reach the ground on any of them. The amazing thing, this was his first time riding on dirt roads and tracks. He has plenty of experience with road riding and racing, but adventure and enduro riding? Zero. Normally it's very difficult for road riders to swing across to dirt riding. But Stretch said he was always comfortable with the rear sliding out in road racing, so this soft sand doesn't present too much challenge. The variety of terrain is always surprising. Soft sand keeps alternating with hard-packed dirt. The Adelaide-Darwin Railway Track. This runs all the way from the south of Australia to the north for 3,000 kilometres. We keep following the railway track to where it crosses the Finke River, the location of our campsite for the first night. And here we are, the Finke River, the oldest known river in the world with an estimated age of 400 million years. It only flows for a few days a year, and when this happens, the water usually disappears into the sands of the Simpson Desert. The riverbed is very wide at this point, so we go exploring. I can see why they chose 500cc dirt bikes for these tours. The sand is much softer than it looks, and it needs a lot of power to stay on top of the sand. Our tour leader went for a very fast trip up the river, but said it got a bit hairy as he couldn't see the dips and bumps in the sand. It all looks the same in strong sunlight. Damo has done the Finke Desert Race a lot, so who knows what crazy speeds he was attempting. We know there are cold beers waiting for us at the campsite, so it's time to head back. Our support crew already have dinner cooking, so it's time to sit around the campfire and tell tall tales about how well we rode today. We early risers head straight for the fire each morning. A brisk 5 degrees last night. Thankfully our fleece-lined swags are very warm. After a hot breakfast, we head out across another huge cattle station.
Oh, warming up in the morning. Day 2. Trying to get used to soft sand again.
One thing is for sure, this trip provides the chance to become a soft sand expert. We even get to ride in some mud. Our guide said that sometimes there is a lot of water here after rain, which makes for some interesting experiences. We will be riding beside the Adelaide-Darwin Railway track for a few hours. The first railway line to Alice Springs was completed in 1929. But it wasn't until 2004 the railway finally crossed the entire country to Darwin, in a total distance of 3,000 kilometres. It bypassed various older railway tracks, and now it's mainly used for freight and the famous Garn train. There's an example of an old Garn locomotive just outside Alice Springs. The Garn is one of the world's famous tourist train trips. Some say its name was to honour the Afghan camel drivers who came to Australia to help 19th century British colonisers explore the outback. Others say the nickname Afghan Express was mocking the unreliability of early steam locomotives. There was an old poem by Dorothy McKellar that kept running through my head. Most Australian kids learn this poem at school. I think this will be the first and last poem I ever recite in my bids, so bear with me. I love a sunburnt country, a land of sweeping plains, of ragged mountain ranges, of drought and flooding rains. I love her far horizons. I love her jewel sea, her beauty and her terror, the wide brown land for me. A big thanks to the various property owners who let us traverse their lands. Our tour guides have spent years gaining access to these cattle stations. Without this access, we would be riding hundreds of kilometres on highways this week. I just wanted to do the right thing and go past the cattle slowly, out of respect for the property managers. We are the slowest riders in our group. Regular viewers will know we usually ride hard enduro, so we are almost never in sixth gear. Also, we aren't used to riding in sand, so you have to excuse our snail pace. But we did find a mapping switch on the Sherco called the Toby Price mode. Definitely more speed, but you know that feeling when you come into a broad, sandy corner, just a bit too fast? Woo! There was also a Toby Price extreme setting. See that fence? We will be riding along this fence for a few hours in a straight line. It really gives you an idea of just how huge these cattle stations are. It's interesting terrain. The red sand is compacted and easy to ride. But there is a constant series of sand hills every 2 kilometres where the sand is much softer. The three of us ride side by side to avoid each other's dust, but we need to keep left at the crest just in case there's oncoming traffic. We settle into a pattern of race up each soft sandhill, then slow down and keep left at the crest, which means the front wheel tends to dig into the sand, then throttle on again. A change of pace. We are riding along the same fence line, but now on the left-hand side. The trail gets narrower and the sand gets softer. I'm a bit wary of that barbed wire fence. I was admiring the scenery when the rear wheel hit an anthill. The seat slammed my butt. I was launched into the air, then narrowly avoided hitting the fence. I figured sliding along a barbed wire fence on my neck would not be good for my health. So I spent the rest of the afternoon focusing more on the track and less on the scenery. Distance, it's Mount Connor. It's often called Foolaroo because tourists think it's actually Uluru. But then they realise there's another 130 kilometres until they arrive at Uluru. Finally, we pull into camp. Again, it's a remote area and one of the cattle stations. Our crew set up the hot shower, cook a Thai curry dinner, and then it's time for beers around the campfire. And our motorbikes? No doubt they are dreaming of tomorrow's tracks as stars and galaxies wheel overhead. As usual, our hosts cook a hot breakfast and we gradually get ready for another day of riding. We are still only part of the way across this massive cattle station, so again, we follow the fence. This has been an amazing way to see the outback for the first time. I didn't realise there was so much variety to the terrain. The northern parts are in the tropics, so monsoonal rains create a lot of green landscapes. We are riding in the central parts, which are mostly red due to so much iron in the soil. Essentially, the central parts of Australia are rusting away. We could probably douse the whole area with WD-40, but it would probably be bad for the environment. Traction could be an issue too. Further south, the outback is a mix of arid desert and temperate regions as you get closer to the southern coast. I asked our guides about other tours. They also do tours of the Simpson Desert. It's almost all soft sand, so they said it needs a lot of good sand riding technique and physical fitness. And for a real challenge, they do a dual crossing. They ride the Madigan line in one direction, then the French line in the opposite direction. Tempting, but I'd really need to work on my fitness. I love this bit. We are on board with tour guide Damo, and he's chasing our other tour guide, Vroomey. I think this is the French line across the Simpson Desert. Parts of it are like a natural terrain motocross track. Of course, the guys make it look easy. Vroomey won the Finke Desert Race back in 2001, and Damo came 10th on a DRZ 400 back in 2000. Okay, back to our trip and back to civilization. We finally arrive at a public road which will take us to the main highway for the final 90 kilometres. Unfortunately, that's the end of the dirt riding to Uluru, as our tour guides haven't been able to get permission to ride on indigenously owned land. The Sherco 500s just lope along the highway, but obviously the dirt is their element. That night we discussed what it would be like doing this trip on our DR650s. But decided the weight and suspension could be tricky in the rough spots.
A community message from the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Idiots who buy DR650s.
It's time for some MotoGP3 action.
Here he comes! Here comes Lorenzo up the inside! Oh, and he goes so close to Rossi as he goes past up the straight. Jorge Lorenzo's going to go through, and he's gone for him. Here comes Rossi up the inside. Rossi retakes the lead. Valentino Rossi, but now he's lost in the game. Lorenzo leads the way. Lorenzo's carried a lot of speed out of turn 9. There's no way through there. Valentino Rossi, and Lorenzo pushing it so hard in there. The Rossi fans go absolutely wild. Here he comes down the straight. Jorge Lorenzo's going to go through, and he's gone through Valentino Rossi. Is he going to take the lead? He does. Rossi's invented something in the final corner, but Lorenzo gets close to the back, and Rossi has beaten him. What a motorcycle!
We pull into our Glamp for a bit of luxury tonight. After lunch, our time is our own. Chill out at home base or visit Uluru and the Olgas. We haven't come all this way to sit on our asses, so we hit the road again. It's National Park now, so there's no dirt riding. It's hard to describe how huge Uluru is. Even when we are 15 minutes away, it dominates the landscape. Tomorrow we do a scenic flight around the rock, which is even more mind-blowing. A few facts. This sandstone formation is a bit like an iceberg. We only see the tip, the rest is underground. It was formed around 550 million years ago when movements in the Earth's crust pushed it up. At certain angles you can see almost vertical lines which show the rock has moved almost 90 degrees when pushed to the Earth's surface. The rock is famous for changing colour throughout the day, varying from dark brown to glowing red. Later that evening we climbed to the lookout above our campsite to check it out. Uluru has great significance for many Indigenous Australians. Archaeological findings suggest they began living in this region 10,000 years ago. Next, it's off to the Olgas or Kata Juta, about 30 minutes away. These sandstone domes were created at around the same time as Uluru. We parked the motorbikes and went for a brief walk. The name for these 36 domes, Kata Juta, means many heads. Tomorrow, it's a scenic flight of these landmarks. Then we fly over the salt pans to our next campsite at Kings Canyon. Day 4 of our week in the Aussie Outback. Today, welcome to Red Dust Airlines. In the event of an emergency, a drinking tube will drop from the ceiling and supply Bundaberg rum. Exits are located everywhere once the plane crashes. Yesterday we rode around Uluru, now we see it from the air. Simply incredible. Ditto for the Olgas. We fly over the salt pans of the Amadeus Basin. Geological movements created Uluru and the Olgas roughly 550 million years ago. Since then, erosion has been placing salt in this area. Lake Amadeus is the largest salt lake at 180 kilometres long. When there is sufficient rain, the water eventually flows into the Finke River. Next, we fly over Finke Gorge, a desert oasis which is one of the oldest water catchments in the world. Our crew have already transported our bikes and set up a new base camp. After lunch, it's free time. We can either chill or head out to Finke Gorge. 40 kilometres of highway, but it's well worth the ride. That's the end of the riding for today, guys, but if you're interested, hang around for a quick walk through this amazing gorge. Tomorrow, the absolute best part of the trip, we ride along the ancient Finke River and camp on the riverbed under a huge cliff. Day 5 of our 6-day tour of the Outback. For me, this was the highlight of the week, a spectacular ride along the Finke River into the Finke Gorge. We hit the highway for a while. The Outback is home to a wide variety of animals, but we rarely see them. But finally, I do see a camel up ahead. Obviously the bikes are quite loud, so they tend to disappear. But bushfire and climate factors have also meant less wildlife in these areas. Were originally imported for exploration, then carrying freight before the railways and motor vehicle became established. Camel drivers came from a range of different countries, not just the Middle East, but they were collectively referred to as the Gans. In the 1920s, the camel business ended, and unfortunately the camels were released into the desert. There are at least 100,000 feral camels now competing with native species. These red dirt highways crisscross the outback. There's plenty of variety. One moment they are wide and straight, then they narrow into gentle curves. Occasionally there's a low sandhill and the sand is much softer. And it begins, the Finke Gorge route. This is one of Australia's famous four-wheel drive tracks. We will ride increasingly difficult tracks through soft sand, rocks, water crossings, and camping below the incredible cliffs of Finke Gorge. There were plenty of warnings on that sign. High clearance, four-wheel drives only. Experienced four-wheel drivers only. Vehicle recovery equipment essential. Emergency plans essential. Beware of rapid flooding. We have 2 support vehicles and just the right bikes for the job. Some of the upcoming tracks would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, on fully laden adventure bikes. Like me, Coxie is into hard enduro, so riding in top gear regularly is a weird experience. He is smooth. He has always worked hard on his technique and goes to quite a few coaching sessions. Good technique, smooth, conserve energy. Our first crossing of the Finke River. Jeff, Coxie and I mess around in the riverbed. As mentioned on the first day, the Finke River is arguably one of the oldest rivers in the world, possibly 400 million years. It's 600 kilometres long, and it actually only flows for a few days each year, with the water disappearing into the Simpson Desert. This part of the Finke River has permanent waterholes, and the dry riverbed is wide and flat. It varies from soft sand to gravel, and we'll be riding along long sections of this soon. Historically, the Finke River provided travel and trade routes for Aboriginal tribes. The most common Indigenous name seems to be Larabantha, meaning salty river, as some of the waterholes are quite salty. After the establishment of an inland mission at Hermanberg in 1877, Lutheran missionaries came to use the Finke as a supply route. The first white settlers established a pastoral industry around the reliable waterholes of the Finke River. Lots of alternating patches of soft sand and gravel. The riding technique for both seems to be quite similar. Weight to the rear of the bike. Speed is your friend. The faster you go, the more you ride on top of the sand instead of digging in. Try to avoid using the front brake and just gradually reduce throttle instead. And get comfortable with letting the bike move around and try not to over-control the handlebars. We stop at Boggy Hole. This billabong can vary from 2.5 kilometres long to just 300 metres long, depending on rain. A beautiful spot and great for a swim in hot weather. You have to love Australian place names. Boggy Hole. We seem to make a habit of bizarre names for our towns and landmarks. Pisspot Creek, Titwobble Lane, Peculiar Knob, Stinkpot Bay, Licking Hole and Bastard Gum Flat. We are really enjoying this riding. The consistency of the sand varies a lot, then the terrain keeps alternating with gravel and rocky patches. Finke Gorge is very wide at this point, and we only occasionally see cliffs and rocky outcrops to each side. But soon the gorge will narrow and we'll be camping under one of the highest cliffs in the gorge. This trip has given me a whole new appreciation for steering stabilisers. I tend to avoid buying products that allegedly make us ride better. I've always believed actually learning to ride is much more important. But I must admit, these stabilisers really work well in soft sand. I swapped bikes with somebody who had turned his stabiliser off and I almost crashed 4 times in soft sand until I realised what was different. And finally, our campsite. It's time to crack a beer, watch the red cliff glowing in the sunset, and get ready to ride the rest of Finke Gorge tomorrow. This is the life. Day 6, the final day of our epic 6 days of riding the Australian Outback. Campsites don't get much better than this. The riverbed of the world's oldest river. And we are surrounded by the cliffs of Finke Gorge. We warm up the bikes and take one final look at this beautiful section of the Finke River. It's been an incredible trip so far. We visited a pile of iconic landmarks and tracks. Day 1, the Finke Racetrack, Chambers Pillar. Day 2, access to private properties and camping near Mount Connor. Day 3, riding to Uluru and the Olgas. Day 4, a scenic flight over those rock formations, then landing at Kings Canyon. Day 5, riding the famous track along the Finke River to Finke Gorge. And today, we finish Finke Gorge, then finish off with some great dirt riding on the final leg to Alice Springs. Time to hit the road, or the riverbed to be more precise. As previously mentioned, the Finke River only flows briefly each year. This can vary from a few hours to a few weeks. With enough rain, torrents of water flow through this canyon, sweeping debris and boulders along the riverbed. Unlike most rivers, it doesn't flow to the sea. Instead, it flows inland and the water disappears into the deserts. There are 9 permanent waterholes along this route, which sustain the local wildlife. We have crossed the Finke River many times on this trip. Here is our final crossing as we leave the gorge and begin our final leg to Alice Springs. We have a brief stop and discover this bike discarded by some idiot campers. It is easy to wheelie, but we are constantly amazed at the morons who leave garbage. In the first video, I talked about the sense of timelessness riding through these landscapes, which are some of the oldest on Earth. There was a song that kept running through my head. I apologise in advance. I used to play bass guitar in a band many years ago. Bass players are shy, introverted people who secretly dream of being lead singers. Consider this your warning. Out where the river broke, the bloodwood and the desert oak, Holden Rex, boiling diesel, steaming 45 degrees. The time has come to say there's fair, to pay the rent, to pay our share. The time has come. A fact's a fact. It belongs to them. Let's give it back. How can we dance when our earth is turning? How do we sleep while our beds are burning? The time has come to say there's rare, to pay the rent now, to pay our share.
The time has come, but that's a fact. It belongs to them, let's get it back.
If you have sustained ear injuries or emotional pain, feel free to join the class action lawsuit that many viewers have joined already. Just ring for more information.
Thanks for calling Cross Training Enduro. If you are trapped under your motorbike because of our training vids, please press 1. If our training vids have caused permanent disability, press 2. If you would like to join the class action lawsuit against our training vids, press 3.
It's time to hit the highway again. We have two options. If we are tired after 6 days of riding, we can just ride for 1 hour on the highway back into Alice Springs. But if we are idiots or suckers for punishment, we can do a detour on the final section and ride some of the popular dirt tracks into Alice Springs. We are A-grade idiots, so of course we chose the dirt riding option. Fatigue was setting in. Only a few of us hit the dirt again. Coxie and Jeff aren't tired at all. They have been doing hard enduro events regularly, so they are quite fit. Me, I'm only a marshal at those events, so I don't have quite the same level of fitness. I must admit, I'm tired after 6 days, but there's plenty of good dirt riding around Alice Springs. It would be a shame to miss it. The outback is one of the flattest landscapes on Earth, but our guides find a little hill climb for us. There are a few ridges to ride along. Our guides showed us this great footage of riding one of these ridge lines. But we were keen to see more of the dirt tracks, so we hit this twisty section for our final ride into Alice Springs instead of the scenic option. had a lot of questions about the Sherco 500 SEF and my impressions. I did a review video about the Sherco based on my opinions and also Jeff and Coxie's comments. Big bore enduro bikes aren't our specialty, but we were impressed with the French Thumper. We asked our guides about the reliability. These Shercos have a pretty hard life. They do the Fink Desert Race, the engines are often working hard in soft sand. There are plenty of aggressive riders on the tours. The mechanic has been doing the top ends when the 500s get close to 200 hours. To date, apparently only the expected amount of wear. Problems? They have had 2 bikes stop when electric cable had worn through, but an easy fix in each situation. And apparently that's it for a fleet of 18 Shercos. Not bad at all. This is bizarre. I have never ridden through a tunnel before. Finally, we can see Alice Springs in the distance. What an incredible trip. A big thanks to our hard-working crew who made this journey such a pleasure. Our fellow riders, it was great to meet you and ride with you. If you have never seen the Outback, consider a two-wheeled adventure. Ride to live, live to ride.